This is Bob Ambrogi, and today we're getting a demo of Spellbook. And here to help me with that is Daniel DiMaria, the co-founder and chief revenue officer of Spellbook. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Bob. Happy to be here.
Good to see you. So I want to get into a little bit more of a demo a bit down the road, but just for people who are not at all familiar with Spellbook, let's kind of start at the beginning. And even before the beginning, why don't we start with you and kind of your background and how you got into all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a lawyer for a very brief period of time. I still am a lawyer, but I practiced for a very brief period of time.
You're a recovering lawyer.
Recovering lawyer, right? Yeah, that's thrown out a lot. We have a lot of recovering lawyers at Spellbook, actually. It turns out, I encountered the experience of actually drafting and reviewing and basically working with documents as a transactional lawyer firsthand. My brief practice, and this is the thing that everybody says. I thought there had to be a better way to do it, and this is back in 2017. We founded the company in 2018, but that was really when the experience happened. And we started tackling the problem well before large language models existed, modern AI existed as we know it, through a company called Rally, which we started in 2018.
That's right too. I forgot about that. I did know that. I did know that. Yeah, you guys were pretty early in this space, and it's gotten a little more crowded over the years. But
It's
you were
busy. It's
definitely
busy. Yeah.
you were definitely early in. So, I mean, what exactly was the problem? I mean, why is this a problem for lawyers and who are engaged in transactional law?
It's the problem is to a lot of what lawyers do is document synthesization. So they have all the information available across a lot of different sources, whether it's, documents in their data management system, a previous deal they did in the past that has some relevant ingredients, but there's a term sheet or an email chain that has the other ingredients you got to synthesize into the document. Maybe, some notes from another lawyer or the counterpart or something like that. The experience of like getting to the draft and then managing the draft through the whole negotiation process to get it to execution is a very manual process, just going really deep into text in an almost like administrative way, copying, pasting, splicing, testing your short-term memory, going from document to document. It feels very manual-y, I think. Like that's really what the problem is, like manual, like monotonous experience of just grinding text. And, growing up as a millennial and, living with apps and computers and everything, I thought there's no real way computers are tackling like the actual like direct text side of things well at the time. And, eventually we tried to tackle it with template-based automation initially because there wasn't AI. And that was really good at getting you to that first draft. But it required a lot of, upfront prep. You needed to build out the questionnaires that inserted into the templates. So it could help a little bit with the, first draft genesis, but after that, you're kind of back to the same position of going in alone into these documents. And then AI kind of flipped that on its head eventually. But that's really what the problem is that we initially started with.
Yeah. And how have you evolved in tackling that product? I mean, you guys were pretty early in not just in sort of using AI generally, but in using agents and using I think you were one of the first legal platforms to incorporate GPT-5 when that came out. I mean, how has this product evolved since 2017 or whatever it was when you founded this? And how have you incorporated generative AI in particular during that evolution?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think it's like two like big inflection points probably in our history. So, outside of the creation of the company. So we created the company in 2018 and we started with Rally, that platform. This was used by primarily mid to small transactional private practice legal teams doing, corporate commercial work for the most part. And it was just that. It was template-based automation. And I would say like we did have product market fit to some extent. We had customers. We had hundreds of customers, but it was tough to get them to use it and use it well. Even when you configure your templates well, they're not perfect because there's always additional context and nuances in the matter you're working on. So you kind of had to massage them to get them to that first draft level, even if you configure the templates well. So we knew it wasn't going to be a true venture scale success. There was too much friction when it came to tackling the problem that we wanted to solve. And the first inflection point was generative AI, was large language models. So we were experimenting with actually GPT models pretty early. And GPT-3 was the first model that was really, really powerful, we thought, when it came to text. It was very general. It understood context really well in a document. It was pretty accurate at generating text when prompted, pretty accurate at reviewing, doing summaries of documents as well. And that was like our first taste of just how powerful this and how powerful in general this technology could be. Now, we used the previous GPTs as well, and they just simply weren't as powerful. And the fun fact, like GPT-3 came out well before ChatGPT as an
Right,
app.
right, right.
GPT-3 was
Yeah,
released in like 2020.
yeah.
So we were experimenting with it before everyone knew that it was such an obvious thing that would change how lawyers do work, really.
Mhm.
We we built Spellbook as a dedicated word add-in in using ChatGPT, sorry, using GPT-3 in 22 and launched it, I'd say like 4 months or so before ChatGPT got released. And we put it in front of our rally customers and they were just absolutely blown away. And we just grew our user base really, really fast because we're kind of already in the space. We knew what customers wanted, having done it for the last couple of years. And that was kind of the first inflection point, like putting like using a pre-trained model to write in Word to meet lawyers where they work and putting it in front of them and then building features on top of that. That was kind of the first inflection point. And the second inflection point came I would say in like 23 when we just realized how much guardrails and additional build outs on top of these LLMs, how much you can do with that orchestration layer, if you will, how much more powerful you can make the experience. And we've been really building on that pretty much ever since. And it's led us to basically our biggest and fastest growing market right now, which are in-house legal teams, which we work with
Mhm.
predominantly. Work with a lot of law firms as well, definitely transactional law firms and practice groups, but our in-house customer group has been growing a lot.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question as to who are your primary users? But it's in-house
Yeah,
is
enterprise
the
legal
greatest
teams.
focus these days. Yeah, that makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
very widely used. We're in about 4,500 legal teams in 80 countries, so very very global. We didn't like seek to be a global company from day one. Really, when it came to our customer base, we eventually expected to grow there, but there's just a lot of demand from companies all over the world, which has been great for us. Dropbox, eBay, Franklin Templeton, Bagloyd, Crocs, Aricia, a lot of big logos are in our customer base, and many more that I can't name. And it's growing quite quickly, and it's amazing to see the appetite by these legal teams to adopt AI. I mean, they know that the companies that they work in, sometimes legal can be bottleneck at times, and typically these teams are, I wouldn't say under resourced, but maybe over tapped. I mean, it is basically a free legal resource for the business functions in that organization. So when you have an AI function like Spellbook, you can be a lot more efficient and effective at getting answers and getting work out the door, whether it's negotiations, doc review, et cetera. But also one thing that we're putting a lot of work into is equipping business users in those organizations with AI that's informed by the preferences of the in-house legal teams. So we have a product called Spellbook Greenlight, which, as the name suggests, allows business users in an org to run it on a document and get greenlit that they don't need to elevate it to legal. It passes the risk profiles and preferences of the legal team as they configured it.
In along the course of the company's development, you've also raised some money, most recently $50 million just last October, I think. So how has that helped you to grow and expand?
Yeah, it's helped a lot. I mean, we brought in some great partners in that last raise. There's so much to be done here. There's so much innovation on the product side with AI that AI exists. So a big part of that raise was to grow our product team and keep doing research, keep building out the product. It's changed a lot since then. I can only imagine what it's going to look like in by October of this year. And then of course support functions. We built our legal solutions architect team, which is basically a team of lawyers that help support our customers both before their customer and after. That way they can really kind of build out those nuanced configurations in Spellbook that are specific to their use case. Having lawyers on the team to support them is a big one. Building out our sales, our customer success, really building the whole thing, building the company as a whole, I would say. But the main reason for the raise was to really improve our product development cycle and make it faster and better and be able to incorporate more feedback from customers so we can deliver a better product.
So would this be a good time to just maybe go into it a little bit and you can show us a little bit about what it does and how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see, we're in Microsoft Word. Now, Spellbook has two components, you could say. It has the word adding component and then the dedicated web app component or desktop app component called Spellbook Associate. That's where our agentic AI lives in Spellbook Associate. Now, the word add-in is very full featured. We're actually the first to implement a word add-in that could do native docx redlining and editing, and it's very full featured. You'll see there's two tabs at the top. I have my assistant tab and my playbooks. So our playbooks are where we can run these configured rule-based playbooks on documents. I'm just going to navigate to SaaS risk assessment. We happen to be in a SaaS contract right now, and I'm just going to run a playbook on this to kind of show you how it works. But typically, our users will configure these playbooks with their preferred rule-based standards for evaluating a document. And you can see if I click on any of the rules, I can see in this case we have some risk levels, and in some others we may have some preferred terms, and it will flag how it runs in this document. Now, the great
Are
thing
these
about
entirely customer configured, or do you ship some out of the box?
great question. So we do ship some out of the box, though for the most part, I would say 90% plus of the ones that are actually used are going to be customer configured. Great question. Now, the great thing about playbooks is you don't need to manually build these. You can build them, you can generate them automatically from a source document. So if you have like a model contract, let's say you're an in-house organization, you review a lot of third-party, vendor agreements, maybe some are first-party, review a lot of third-party ones. You may have like a model, agreement that covers the terms and your preferences really, really effectively. You can upload that into Spellbook, and it will automatically generate a playbook simply based off that document using AI. Now, you may need to polish it a little bit here and there, but for the most part, it will deliver a very usable playbook based off that model document. If you happen to have alternatively and we see this a lot with our in-house customers, they might have like a 14-page handbook on how you review a certain document type. You could just upload that. The AI can parse that, use that to build out a playbook effectively. Now, we do have white glove support for customers that want, a little bit more of a bespoke approach to getting their playbooks configured. Our legal solutions architects, they're transactional lawyers with private practice and in-house backgrounds. They'll help configure those for our customers. But yes, it is configured to answer your question. In a very long answer, that is the answer. That is yes, they are customized for customers. Yes. So you can see we ran it on the document, and it's coming back with some stuff. So you can see it works in like a green, red, a yellow indication on the left. So we'll go ahead and start with a payment risk term. So this came back as low risk. Basically, it saw my preferences. It indicated the rule. It says it is net 30 or less, so that's low risk for us. It even cites where in the document it found the text that it created its assessment based off of. And I can just scroll through some of the other risk profiles and just see, where everything else lives, see the analysis. And that's true for any of these. Now, you can also configure these playbooks to have your fallback positions, where it can automatically redline in a document based on your request. Now, this particular one is just a risk assessment. So it's all coming back with risk levels for each term, but you can configure it to be basically a tool to automatically redline documents to your preferred standard as well. It's really up to the customer how they like to configure it. Okay, moving over to the assistant. So the assistant is a lot more, I would say, free form. There's really no configuration needed in the assistant to get value from Spellbook. Now, firstly, Spellbook is a complete chat assistant built right into Word, and you do have the ability to configure it with your documents. We integrate with a lot of different document repositories. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and click legal sources, and I'm going to tag my library so it knows my library of documents. I think I have about 10,000 commercial documents in my library. And we'll also tap USA, so it has US legal sources as well. And we can ask it anything we'd like, and it knows the entire context of this document, the preferences in our library, and is exposed to a lot of legal sources as well. So you can ask it legal questions. But just to maybe show off how it works around integrating into your library, I could say, you know, mm, what is the limitation of liability in this agreement, for example. So it's going to go through it, give me a search, and it will summarize this in a few seconds. So here we go. It's doing it. It's telling me where the language is, and also give me an assessment, which is great. Now I could say, find a limitation of liability clause that I've used in this type of agreement in the past. And in this case, it's going to know, okay, I'm going to tap into the library and find some examples. And you can see it's already searching my library. It found 10 clauses and it should come back. Okay, looks like it's stuttered. Oh, there we go. Now it's coming back. Perfect. So it found an agreement that had a clause that's relevant.
This library is a collection of documents that you've pointed it to or that you've specified in some way?
Yeah, it's my library that I have, I have thousands of contracts in, and I'm really just trying to have it, pull something that could be to my preference. Now, if I was a real lawyer doing this in a real way, I'd probably refine my approach a little bit more. I'd say, hey, I want you to, find something in a SaaS agreement where I've represented parties that it's similar negotiating power, or the deal terms are similar, something like that. But I can go ahead and say I like this one. I could say insert, and it will generate the red line where I can just simply insert it. So it's a very conversational way to working with your past knowledge base to work with a document. So after a couple seconds, it'll come back and say, hey, here's the language, and I can just apply it right into the document, and it will do that. So there we have it. I want to clean up the formatting a little bit. No, it's pretty good. Just might change the all caps. Okay. Now you can also ask it legal questions as well. I could say, hey, is this compliant with California law? And it will, do a legal search for me. It'll let me know all the sources that it's hitting, case law, statutes, which ones. It'll cite all of them, but it will give me an analysis here that I could work through based on the sources. And I can even unload uh, the sources here so I can see where they're coming from. So
That's just based on using the GPT or whatever model you're using here in terms of it's not looking into a legal research database or something like that,
yeah,
right?
so it actually is looking into legal research databases. I can see what those are if I just uncollapse the country. So we have all these sources that it's pulling
Oh, I
from.
see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We configure those and we update those regularly as well. So it does have that capability too. Now, you can give it a general request like, hey, I want you to edit this document to do X, and it will generate that edit that could be inserted as a red line into the document too. So ask is really kind of like I need to do something in a document. I'm just going to go to ask and ask it to do it, and it will be able to do it for the most part in any document. Now, there are some other discrete features. One example is our comparative market. So I'll just go ahead and run this comparative market analysis. I'm going to let it know that I'm representing the customer instead of the vendor. And with Spellbook, we have tens of millions of contracts going through Spellbook every year. And what we do is when a contract runs through Spellbook, we anonymize it, we extract the deal terms, we identify the contract type, and we store that term information into a database to better tune our internal benchmarking layer for a contract type. So if it's a pretty standard contract that a lot of people, a lot of lawyers would use, in this case, a SaaS agreement is very, very common in the US. It's going to run this analysis on the contract after a couple seconds. It'll let me know how many contracts in the pool, and there's thousands and thousands in the pool, it compared this contract against, and let me know where this sits market wise relative to the deal terms in the pool. So in this case, you could see it's saying, all right, there are 11 deal terms that I extracted from this contract that I ran against the benchmarking layer internally. And one of them, 8 of them are within market. And I can click on any of these and see the market distribution. So it looks like 12 months for renewal term is used in 46% of contracts. So it's very common. That is clearly in market. Initial term, 12 months. That's very common as well. That's the most by over a third. But there are 3 terms that are outside of market. I can see those too. So one of them, critical support response time, this is outside of market, but it benefits my party. And you can see that in the explanation. So I would probably not want to negotiate against this one and say, hey, this isn't market. We need to redline this and change this because it benefits my party that I represent. And it's based on 1,700 and change documents in this case. Now, these two, data breach notification period and IP indemnification scope, are outside of market and disbenefit my party. So, for example, here it's saying customer identification places entire liability on the customer, and that's rare. It's only in 9% of agreements. What's common is mutual non-vendor only. These are what's market. So this would be a good starting point if I was negotiating this contract, where I would redline it and say, hey, this isn't market, and it isn't fair, basically, and start there. So you could run this analysis in any commercial document type, and it will give you a starting point for like where the document sits relative to what's market.
Yeah. Where's the data coming from again in terms of helping determine what's market?
Yeah. So I mean, the market problem has historically been very opaque because, where do these contracts live? Like, I guess Edgar is a good database, but
Right,
they're
right.
they're skewed to big public companies. Private agreements are based on field for the most part. So in the case of Spellbook, we actually anonymize and extract it from contracts that are run by our users. And
Okay. But
you know,
so
there
there's
might be
not a security or confidentiality issue there for your customer.
there's not. No, there's not because of the way that it's done. It's almost like Bob. It's like if I had 1,000 bananas and I removed the peel from 1,000 bananas and had a pile of peels and a pile of bananas, could you tell which peel came from each banana? You could not. That's the banalogy that we use to explain this. I'm kind of joking, but it's more
I've
like
never heard that one. I like that. That's good.
okay, yeah, you can keep that one. It's because we're not actually like storing the contract data. We're scrubbing the terms, so like the legal terms, and identifying what contract it's coming from. And it's just going into a data pool to tune our benchmarking. That's basically how it works.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Uh, Now, Spellbook can also do a lot of reviewing, of course. If I tap review, I have a lot of review options. Some users might just run a general risk and issues, for example. You have a lot of options. I could do a proofread pass. I actually have some previous activities here. I ran a proofread a moment ago. We'll go ahead and click on that. So I did a quick proofread pass and went through and just found some spelling issues, a template that was left over, just stuff like that to really clean up a document before being sent off. And it does this really, really well. And it's trained to do it as lawyers would proofread a document, and of course cites everything. Now, if I wanted to do a full negotiation, just a AI powered negotiation, I can run that as well. I can go to negotiation, select the party I represent. I could even give it additional context. Hey, the vendor has a lot of negotiation power here. Consider that when you propose changes. And I can also throttle how aggressive I want it to be. Do I want a light markup, only flag material risks and issues, standard or heavy? Do I want like a lot of stuff being presented? We'll just do light in this case, and I'll go ahead and run it. And we're not going to wait for this. This might take like a minute or so, but after a couple seconds, it'll start to propose some elements to negotiate on behalf of the party that we selected. So this will come back. Actually, and the great thing about Spellbook is you can multi-thread. So while this is going on, I can just tap back. I could see that it's currently doing a negotiation, but I ran one earlier just to show you. And here it's giving us each element that it wants us to look at. We have a commercially reasonable efforts is a weak service commitment. I can see where it came from. It even proposed a revision that I could apply. I can even select if I want the comment to be articulated for an internal pass for another lawyer at my firm, for example, or for a counterparty, and I can just apply this in right away, and it will do that change for me. And you can always edit the comment if you'd like. So,
So when you
that's it. Yeah.
well, so when you say negotiation, I mean, one of the complaints I've heard sometimes from lawyers about some redlining software is that you're basically trading templates in a sense. I mean, the counterparty sends you their agreement, and they've got their preferred language in there, and then you run it through your redline software, and it sticks in your preferred language, and you don't really get anywhere trading templates. So does this help you get around that at all?
Yeah, I mean, we engineer Spellbook to not be, based on preferred language that's without substance. It's more getting to the actual deal term itself. That has an actual legal effect on the parties' obligations and rights in the agreement. So yeah, I think with Spellbook, it would never frivolously make a suggestion for preferred language's sake. It would have material reason for the proposed suggestion, and we'll document it here. Yeah.
And then it can then craft language that's a little more flexible than just what you might have in your playbook or in a template or something like that.
Yes, absolutely. And additionally, I can even regenerate or even ask for changes. I could say too aggressive, for
Yeah.
example, and it will rewrite. It'll identify the issue, but it can you know change the proposed red line based on my prompt as well. So I can prod it in the direction that I want to go when I'm going through negotiation as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
here I have the softened output based on that request.
Yeah.
So, in the interest of time, I'm going to hop over to the associate functionality. But largely the word add-in is it's highly configurable. It can incorporate your library. The ask is very, very flexible. excellent for, I would say, like transactional level legal research. You're going through a document, you want to gut check on whether or not, a certain term is legal, or if there's anything that's, overtly, illegal or legally questionable in a contract that you're reviewing. I would say just go in to ask, tap the jurisdictions you want it to look at and say, hey, let me know if there's any legal risks based on a research pass in this contract, for example. Reviewing is very comprehensive. We have a lot of different ways you can review a document. So we can, of course, draft language as requested, as any AI system embedded into Word should. And then we have some of these other discrete features, comparative markup being a notably new one. So that covers the Word add-in, I think, for the most part. But it's very malleable. Like you go into Ask, you throw stuff at it, and it tends to perform really well. Okay, so let's hop over to Associate, and we'll just show a couple quick workflows. So I'm in the web app. We also have a desktop app if you prefer. Either work with Associate. And I'll start by showing you how it works. So it's very much a sandbox environment that you could throw multi-doc tasks at. A lot of our customers, when they're first seeing Spellbook, go, okay, when do I know to go from Word add-in to Associate? And the basic answer is when you need to work with multiple documents, whether it's a multi-document edit, multi-document review. At that point, the scope of Word is too restrictive. Go on over to Associate. You can tap folders in your library as well for it to look at. So you could, look at a specific, commercial doc folder and say, hey, find a precedent that is X, and it'll be able to find that for you and do whatever you'd like. You can also build workflows within Associate. So if you want to build like a multi-doc, multi-step workflow, Associate could handle that. For example, in this case, I have a data room generation workflow. I have a demo due diligence workflow. So I'm just going to go and select what this workflow looks under the hood, then I'll show you how to actually use it. So in this case, it's basically saying a multi-prompt step of going through a bunch of documents and generating a table, with a due diligence pass basically on the documents. And what I did a moment ago is I ran this and I uploaded about 30 or so documents, almost 30 documents, and it came back with a complete table going through all of these, identifying exclusivity, minimum purchase requirements, change of control, assignment, and basically letting me know how the state of each of these in the set of documents that were uploaded. So it generated this table, and I can export this table to Word or CSV if I'd like as well to analyze it further. But it generated it simply by uploading all those documents and it doing the due diligence pass itself. So there's no limit on this. You can do this with any document type or any number of documents as well. When you're working with a very large number of documents, I would direct you to our. So in this case, I have 114 commercial agreements, and it's still extracting. I just uploaded these a moment ago. It might take a couple of minutes for, depending on how complex the documents are. But these are all commercial agreements for a fictional company that's been uploaded to Spellbook. And you can see, I noted signing date, effective date, parties, jurisdiction, auto renewal, and it's providing me with answers to each of these. But I can also add a column, so I could ask it anything. So I can call it MFN, and I can say, is there a most favored nations clause, for example? And if I hit create, it's going to, in a moment, create that new column, and it'll start to run the extraction process for each of these and give me an answer to these. So you can do these
So
kind
you
of
can just do that on the fly, even while it's extracting the other data you've already asked for?
absolutely. You can do it on the fly, and it'll be able to work through it. Now, because it's processing a lot here, it could take a little bit of time, depending on how many. Like some of our users will do thousands of documents on this, for example, and that might take like I would come back, go get coffee, go for a walk, and it might be done after that. It could take a little bit of
Yeah.
time,
Hey, I've got
but
all afternoon. We're in no hurry here.
exactly right. But usually it's like just have it do that, and then I can come back to it later, and it would be complete. But yeah, it's already starting to work through, which is great. Now, the great thing about Associate is it is a full multi-doc docx editor. So if you are doing like a multi-doc review, or you want to draft over precedent documents or templates, it's an excellent resource for that. So for example, I could just say, let's go. Let's just go to. I'm just going to get to the environment here, and I'm going to say, and you don't need to do this, but I'm just going to say this to prime it. I kind of like to do this. Just kind of gets my mind sorted before I work with associate. I say, I'm going to upload a term sheet for a financing deal and some templates. And I will go ahead and drop in a handful of NVCA templates, as well as a term sheet for a fictional deal. Now, these are all docx. It could be PDF. These happen to be docx. And I can go ahead and click on my term sheet, and I can see a preview of this in a moment when it loads up. And it's basically just that. It's a term sheet with all the deal terms outlined for this financing deal. And if I just select right of first refusal, for example, like this is a very standard National Venture Capital Association template, but you can see it here. So it's very freeform. I can instruct it to do anything here. I mean, again, I have my library I could tap. I have legal sources I could tap if I'd like. I could add additional files. It's almost like full agentic native docx editor capable lawyer in a box that I can work with. But this is a fairly straightforward one. I'm going to say using the terms in the term sheet. Maybe that's redundant. Fill in and complete the NVCA docs. If anything is missing, I'll say use seed round standards or your best judgment, for example. So now I made spelling mistakes. That was not a great way to prompt it, but it's fine. It'll be able to deal with that. So what it's going to do is it's going to go through a thinking step where it's going to let you know what it's going to do. It's kind of like spelling out its reasoning. And now it's starting, and you basically see what it's saying. It says, "Hey, here's what I'm going to preserve. Here's what I'm going to do in these documents." And now it's starting the reading and editing process. So this might take a couple of minutes, but it will in fact go into each document based on the information in the term sheet and do every edit surgically in those documents. And I actually pre-cooked one a moment ago for the sake of time. But in this case, we had it run through these documents as well. And if I click on one of them, we can go right to first refusal. When it loads up, you will see all the edits that are done in line. Now they're done natively in docx. I could also download this agreement, and it'll come as track changes. It's taking a moment to load. Maybe we can watch as it's loading. We could watch this one in action. So a great thing is when it's editing, you could actually see it live start to make edits. So if we stick around long enough, we'll see it the cursor start popping in and making changes and all that. There we go. And we can see the edits in the agreement. And if we download it, take a second, it'll download like any Word document, and I can see the edits as track changes. So great way to tackle that document synthesization problem that lawyers experience up until now in history. You just upload all the stuff here, give it a request, and it will work through everything. So yeah, that's a quick tour of some of the main features. It's a fairly full featured system. There certainly is a lot more. There's a lot more on the configuration side, but that's a quick tour of some of its functionality. Yeah.
Well, that
Any
all looks
questions?
great. Really impressive. Some of that I hadn't seen before. Some of that I had seen before, but it's really, really helpful walkthrough. What's still to come? I always like asking about roadmaps. I mean, what are you guys working on? What's coming down the pike?
So there's a lot of like I would say not wouldn't say minor but not massive new releases that are always being added to the system.
Yeah.
So it's always getting better. It's always getting more accurate. We have a whole QA team. It's actually like a team of lawyers and engineers who tend to work really well actually together for QA and assessing performance of the system. So there's a lot of improvements that are always being rolled out. One bigger release that's coming out, I would say toward the end of this quarter, maybe early next, hopefully end of this one, is our deal functionality. And this is almost like I would say like an AI native take on a contract lifecycle management system. We call it, or we haven't decided yet, but maybe like an automated contract management type system where it'll be able to handle everything from creation of the document, negotiation of various parties in your org and the counterparty to execution. And because LLMs are driving it the entire time, post execution, you get fantastic contract intelligence. So you can query it for natural language for certain things. You can originate new matters in plain language, like, hey, a business user needs a NDA for this. It'll generate the correct one. It'll be tapped into email, so it would know the context of the deal that's relevant to the matter they're working on. So really kind of like a very new way of approaching the, I guess, like CLM use case, of like dealing with the contract routing, creation, routing,
Mhm.
and
Right.
storage within an
Right. Right.
organization. Yeah.
Right. I imagine in your role, you must talk to a lot of customers. And what kinds of hand-holding are they needing these days? I mean, how easy is it for them to begin to get up to speed on this product, or to what extent do they need some
Yeah, great question, Bob. I think, I mean, the great thing about Spellbook is, and we built it this way intentionally because we came from Rally, where like when you buy Rally, it doesn't do anything. You have to build out these templates that take time. So that kind of
Rally
time,
still exists, right? That's still a thing, right?
it
Is it
was recently sunsetted
oh, is it? Okay.
like a month
Okay.
ago. Yeah,
Oh,
had
okay,
a
okay,
long run, but it's no longer. Yeah.
okay.
So the time to value issue is something that we experienced firsthand with Rally, where we became allergic to a system that required a lot of configuration to get value from. So the great thing about Spellbook is you don't need to configure it. You can just open it, you can download it, pay for it, open it up, and it's useful. You can prompt it in Ask, you can ask to review documents, you can do multi-doc workflows like I just showed from day one. So the unconfigured version of Spellbook is very easily adopted and was in, we build with design in mind. I think lawyers have like the lowest tolerance for learning new tools than any like category of people in the world, maybe. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they spend so much time learning and speed on the law. They don't want to like learn complex technology. But for Spellbook, we generally don't have like a failure to launch or like people like getting hung up on how to use it effectively. Now, when you configure it with like playbooks and libraries and tabular and the table review and stuff like that, when you do that type of thing, there tends to be a requirement for some handholding there, depending on the sophistication of the users. Oftentimes, when we're deploying with an enterprise legal team, they'll want support because they have a pretty ambitious project of like how they want to configure it to their standards. They'll want to roll it out to business users. They want to roll it out to different contract groups in their organization, for example. But for the most part, I would say it's fairly easy to adopt and quite intuitive for our users.
Yeah. And what's the pricing model for all this? What is it all by the seat or some licensing, or how do you do that?
Yeah, Spellbook's priced on a seat basis, and it's not there's no platform fee or usage fee or anything like that. It's really an all you can eat. So when you buy it, you can configure it and use it as much as you'd like. We encourage you to use it. We find like the platform fees and usage fees tend to discourage people from using something they buy to the full extent. For the business user side, it's priced a lot less. So those users are not priced at the level of the lawyer users. The functionality is also limited in the green light licenses versus lawyers. Yeah.
Anything else we should know? Anything else we haven't talked about that you wanted to cover?
I don't know. No, I think that's pretty good. It's pretty thorough. Yeah,
I
it's
think so.
a lot of information. Yeah.
A lot of information there, yeah. No, that was really interesting. It's great to see it. I love demos. I love being able to see hands-on how something works, so I really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you, and, that does it for today. Thanks to all of you out there for watching.